VoxFX.
Hello there, this is Shao, and welcome to the 14th episode of my 17-part series on getting a great vocal sound. This series is a crash course on vocal stuff blah 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 performance recording mixing. Last time, I explained the concepts of levels and panning, and how they relate to your vocal recordings. Check it out if you haven't seen it yet. Today, I'll be introducing you to the single most important mixing plugin, the Equalizer. There's a lot to cover, so this is going to be a long video, so let's get right into it.
Frequency.
As I mentioned in the video on sound concepts, frequency is the number of times a sound wave completes a repeated pattern of movement per second. However, there's more to it than that. Except for the purest sine wave, all sounds are actually composed of multiple frequencies. These frequencies add together in a particular pattern at particular volumes to create a sound's timbre, or its sonic character. These patterns of frequencies, these timbres, are the reason why an upright bass sounds completely different from a talking bass, even though they're playing the exact same note at about the same volume. So how does all this relate to mixing? Well, you can actually change the pattern of frequencies in a sound, which brings us to equalizers. Normally, when you change a sound's volume, all the frequencies of that sound are changed by the same amount. An equalizer, or EQ, lets you change the volume of some of a sound's frequencies separately from the others. This allows you to alter a sound's timbre. There are three main reasons to use an EQ. First, it can turn down unwanted frequencies and turn up good ones to make an instrument sound better. Second, it lets you change the frequency balance of an instrument so that it fits better with other instruments in your mix. Finally, an EQ is a powerful sound-shaping tool that can achieve some pretty wild effects. I'll be getting into some of the more extreme uses of EQ in later videos, but for now, I'll just explain how to use it to clean up your vocals. So here we have our mix. My favorite pizza toppings are pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. My favorite pizza toppings are pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. Now the vocal already sounds pretty good, but I think I can make it sound better. To do that, I'll use an EQ, specifically a parametric EQ. As you can see, it's inserted in one of the effects slots on the vocal track. Your EQ might look somewhat different, but they all do basically the same thing. So let's break it down. A parametric EQ has multiple independently functioning bands. This one has 7. Each band affects a specific part of the frequency spectrum, which is arranged with the low frequencies on the left and the high ones on the right. Each band has several parameters, hence parametric. You can control where the band is on the spectrum, also known as its target frequency, how much it increases or boosts or decreases or cuts certain frequencies, and how many frequencies it affects, also known as its bandwidth. You can also change the band's shape or filter type. This bell-shaped band is called a peaking filter. It applies the most boost or cut to the target frequency and then tapers off to the left or right. This one is called a shelving filter, because it creates a shelf, either above or below the target frequency, that boosts or cuts all frequencies by the same amount. So I've just made a big mess. Let's listen to how it's changed the vocal sound. My favorite pizza toppings are pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. Okay, so that's probably not how you want to use your EQ, but this gives you an idea of how drastically it can alter the sound. Let me just reset these real quick. Now let's clean up the vocal. For starters, we need to find the frequencies to target. The best way to do so is with a technique I like to call the boost and sweep. You take one band of your EQ, make a big ol' peak, and narrow it a bit, and then sweep it around on the frequency spectrum. My favorite pizza toppings are pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. My favorite pizza toppings are pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. You're listening for things that stand out both in a good way and in a bad way. For instance, this particular area sounds pretty bad, which means this would be a great place to place a cut. Let me just reset that. The boost and sweep can be used on any instrument, not just vocals. It's a great way to learn what frequencies make an instrument sound the way it does. Now I'll explain how I usually apply EQ to a vocal. So the lowest frequencies, like 80 Hz and below, are not really relevant to a vocal. Indeed, the voice itself might not even have frequencies down that low. However, there may still be noise down there. Like if a truck drives past, if you accidentally bump your mic, or if a stray B or P sound gets through your pop filter, it'll cause some unnecessary low-frequency noise. Let me show you. My favorite pizza top. Did you see that? Favorite Pete. That noise, that's the noise we want to get rid of. So we get rid of it by using my favorite little tool, the high-pass filter. Unlike a shelving or peaking filter, the high-pass filter completely removes all frequencies below a certain point. This removal is gradual. You can choose how steeply it does this. I usually keep it pretty gentle on vocals. Favorite pizza toppings. Our favorite pizza topping. For most male-sounding vocals, the high-pass filter can be set at around 100 Hz. For female-sounding vocals, it's usually set closer to 170. And don't be afraid to push it up a bit higher if you're doing something like a podcast, as too much low-end can be distracting. If you are doing that, however, be sure to use a more gentle slope. The high-pass filter is magic. It can really clean up the low end of your mix by getting the unnecessary junk out of the way, and most instruments have this low-end noise, so I recommend putting a high-pass filter on almost all of your tracks, except for your kick and bass, of course. Okay, so back to the vocal. If you want your vocal to have some more low-end power, you can put a boost at the lowest frequency of your vocal called the fundamental frequency. Here's the fundamental of my vocal at about 100 Hz. Are pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. My favorite pizza toppings. Next is the region right above the fundamental. If you want to reduce any muddy or muffling frequencies, put a cut here. For my voice, that's usually around the 200 to 300 Hz area. This is also a great way to cut down on excessive proximity effect. Favorite pizza toppings are pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. My favorite pizza toppings are pepperoni. Another spot I like to cut is around 400 to 500 Hz, as this is generally where boxy or honky frequencies live, the sort of hole sound. Not very pleasant. Favorite pizza toppings are pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. My favorite. The next one is the 2 to 5 kHz range. These are called the presence frequencies, and they contribute to the general intelligibility of the voice. I don't usually mess with this, but if you're having trouble understanding your vocal over everything else, feel free to boost here. Favorite pizza toppings are pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. Last is the 8 to 12K range. These frequencies help your vocal sound airy, sparkly, or shiny. I generally use a shelving filter here, as it grabs more of the high frequencies. But be careful with this range. It can make your vocal really harsh if you boost it too much. So only boost it here by 1 or 2 dB tops. It's a very subtle change. Favorite pizza toppings are pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. And when you're done, it's a good idea to turn your EQ on and off to make sure the changes that you made sound good. Favorite pizza toppings are pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. My favorite pizza topping. I think it's an improvement. Anyway, if you're having trouble finding these frequency ranges on your vocal, use the boost and sweep. Very useful. Another thing I like to do is cut frequencies on other instruments that are getting in the way of the vocal rather than boosting the vocal itself. So, for instance, this rhythm sound right here is kind of covering the presence frequencies of the vocal. I can put a dip in the rhythm frequencies at that point. Favorite pizza toppings are pepperoni, sausage, and bacon. And voila, the vocal is now easier to hear. This idea of frequency juggling can be applied to other instruments that get in each other's way as well, like the kick and the bass. Very common. Now, I know some of you are thinking, wait. You can see the frequencies on your EQ. My EQ doesn't have that. That's not fair. Well, yeah. My EQ does have a built-in frequency analyzer. Favorite pizza topping. That's what these bars are. But you can just use a frequency analyzer plugin. Most DAWs come with one. If yours doesn't, you can always use the free Voxengo Span plugin. Favorite pizza toppings. Link in the description for those who are interested. A frequency analyzer is a great way to learn the frequencies of an instrument, and they can help you see what you're doing in addition to hearing it. Don't rely exclusively on the graph, but it's a helpful tool. Now here are some general EQ pointers. First, before you use your EQ, it's important to ask yourself whether the audio even needs EQ. And if it does, you need to know how and why you're using it. Don't just EQ for the sake of EQing, and don't just blindly follow any frequency lists that you find online. Apply your EQ with a purpose, so that you're not making unnecessary changes. It'll save you a lot of time and will probably sound better. Second, try to cut more than you boost. This makes your audio quieter, which conserves your headroom. Headroom is the distance between the loudest peaks of your audio and the 0 dB ceiling. The more headroom you have, the more options you have when setting the levels of your tracks, which will help you achieve a better mix balance. Third, when mixing, use a wide bandwidth when boosting and a narrow bandwidth when cutting. This will make your EQ changes less noticeable and help your vocals sound more natural. Fourth, make your EQ decisions in the context of the mix. Yeah, you can listen to your instruments by themselves to see how the EQ sounds, but don't settle on your choices until you've heard it all at the same time. Your audience isn't going to hear your instruments in isolation. What matters is how they sound together. Fifth, as stated with the #1 rule of mixing, go easy on your effects. With EQ, this means not boosting or cutting by more than 6 dB per band, except with the high-pass filter. This also helps keep your vocals sounding natural. Finally, take some time to learn your frequencies. Use the boost and sweep to listen to what each frequency range sounds like, not just on your vocals, but on other instruments and even on your entire mix. The better you know your frequencies, the easier it'll be to make the right EQ decisions. Anyway, that's all I wanted to cover here. If you liked what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you want more information or have any questions about EQ, comment below. I'm always open for questions. And as usual, if you'd like to request a VoxFX tutorial, please send me a message. Remember, if it's talky, I can talk about it. Next time, I'll be talking about compressors and how to use them to even out the volume levels of your vocal. Until then, have fun and keep making sound.
VoxFX.
Is anyone